Hello, family. My name is Intabisa Mwejana, and I am a spiritual medium. Thank you so much for coming back to the channel. Thank you for your love. Thank you for the interaction that you are having with me. Thank you for your subscriptions and just your general feedback on how things are working out spiritually for you. And that is the entire intention for the work that we do, so that you can have paradigm shifts that will over time work for the individual, the holistic individual that you are. So, today I'm going to be doing a sharing on something that I have done before. And at the time that I was doing this one, it was under the umbrella of providing a master class for one of the regional radio stations in Limpopo. So when Capricorn FM asked me to do this one, it was because at the time there was such a whole hoo-ha, a whole frenzy about the full moon, the effects of the full moon, and why do spiritual people emphasize a lot of hype about the full moon, or how they themselves get to be affected by the full moon as healers. So it then looked like this is one aspect of nature that affects a certain percentage or a certain niche of people. And the request was for me to demystify the issues about a full moon. And so, with as time went on, clients also requested for me to do a sharing on the effects of the full moon, because at the time, again, ancestors were prescribing a lot of full moon rituals and cleansings. And so now let us do a little bit of a an introspection around ourselves in relation to the moon. So, first of all, let us talk about science. Let us talk a little bit about science. There is what we call a gravitational force. And no matter how anointed you are, if you are going to be sitting on an edge of a table and you lack balance, you will still be pulled by a gravitational force and you will be boom, flat on the floor, right? And that is why certain things we cannot say, certain things of nature are affecting a certain kind of people. Perhaps they will have a higher vibration of the effect because by nature their offering means, or their insight into spirituality means that they have a high vibration. Their frequency is highly elevated, then it gives them an access to see into spirituality more than other people. So, the gravitational force of the moon affects the water in the ocean, and therefore it causes tides. And that is just a scientific statement. And what that means is that there is a time around the full moon where the force of gravity itself is so strong that it causes something that wants to pull the moon down. And because it cannot pull the moon down, then it will have a certain effect on the ocean. On the ocean as you know it, where all sorts of water comes from. And now water becomes a very important element into all the effects of the full moon. And that is how we as human beings come in, because 70% of our bodies is made up of water. And so when that water hits the moon, when that gravitational force hits the moon, and it creates a dynamic in the composition of the water, and you will see that during a full moon, the tides are much more higher in the ocean. That is the whole effect. And because of that effect, The full moon would then impact and hit hard on the 70 percentages of water that we have in our body, and that will cause you a turbulence. It will cause you something that you are not used to throughout the entire time of the month. And so now the moon causes a reaction in the water forces that is found in our body, and it gives us a whole lot of an emotional reaction. So we have a series of emotional reaction. But why is then only the moon getting the the recognition and not the sun? And so for us we need to observe both of them, because as human beings we are known to be people of the sun. And so before we can even get into the moon, let us first understand, how does the sun even affect us? So the sun has a lot to do with our outward expressions. So our personalities, our identity, and our ego are affected or are impacted or are influenced by the sun, while the moon deals with our inward identity, our inner thoughts, our fears, our future aspirations, and our unconscious beliefs. And so that is the dynamic of the sun and the moon and how it affects our personality. And now, because the moon affects our emotions and our inward thoughts and everything else, that is why during full moon you would feel like inside of you you are out of balance and out of kilter, and that is where the whole thing comes from. Now, the moon, because it affects a lot of our personalities, right? So, in the olden days, people used to rely on astronomy, and astronomy simply means the study of the sun and the moon. The sun, which is called the solar, and the moon is called the lunar. And so people used to rely on the astronomy, which is the study of the moon, the stars, and the constellation. So the stars would be the constellation, and the moon would be the lunar, to determine what is going to go on, to determine um, the seasons, to determine how the seasons will be affecting us. And that is the whole study of astronomy. And again, just our entire makeup, the personalities of people. And so the moon was much more reliable, hence the lunar calendar was used. And the lunar calendar has a 29-day circle or a journey around the earth. So it was much more reliable to look at the moon and predict what other things are going to look like in the near future. And so, because of the reliance of the lunar calendar, it was held, it was then used to help track the year, the season, um, and why would you want to track the season? So that we can see when are we going to be doing plantation, and when are we going to do the harvesting, and to also keep in mind what are the possible weather effects, right? So now, meaning that even the food chain and telling about of the success of the food chain also relied on this particular study of the moon and the astrology. Of the astronomy. So the moon does a whole lot of things. It served so many purposes, and that is why people found the lunar calendar to be much more effective. And so, as we went on and civilization came and all of these things, then there was what we call the Gregorian calendar. And the Gregorian calendar is what we have adopted over the years to use, and it has the 12-month journey, the 12-month cycle that starts from January to December. And so, when African people, my great grandmother says to me, when African people wanted to do a migration be, from the lunar calendar to the now mandatory Gregorian calendar, people did not know how to register people's births. And so now they would watch you over a long time to say, when are you mostly the happiest? And if, let's take me for example, I'm born on the month of April, and they would do a certain observation on me, and in perpetually every time in April, if I appear to be happy, then they would say she is born in April. And that is how other people were given certain birth dates, because we needed to slot everybody else in into the Gregorian calendar. And so, I mean, watch yourself. Watch yourself. When are you really mostly happy? Throughout the whole year. In April, no, whether I am broke or I am whatever financial state, or but something, everybody knows that this is like the national month of Ntabi. And so clearly it has some truth to it, but you can even assess yourself. And so now the whole world has sort of adopted the Gregorian calendar, and some religions and some cultures they still use the lunar calendar, and hence you will hear of things that we call the Chinese year, right? And in African culture, you will hear people say, we do not celebrate the new year on the 1st of January, but we do so around September, because September was the time on the month of the harvest, and that is when we do festivities and the sharing of the food, and that is largely around what the lunar calendar could have prescribed. Now, there is an understanding that the moon is always full, depending on which part of the world you are in. And so the moon goes through so many journeys. And when you see it as a full moon, you would have, or you should have observed it as a new moon. And the new moon starts at the start of the lunar journey, right? And now, when we say something is a full moon, what do we then mean? We mean that is a midpoint where there is an equal pressure of the moon and an equal pressure of the sun at the same time on this round sphere called the moon, right? So when we say the moon is full, it means that there is an equal pressure of the moon and equal pressure of the sun, and it makes into the circle. But it does not mean that the moon starts to disappear. The moon will show you certain halves, certain parts, certain quarters, certain everything before it will before you would then observe it as a full moon. But there is no way where the moon starts to break and it cuts, and one day it decides, yo, I forgot I need to be full again. So it is always in circular form. And now, um, so that is the reason why there is a hype, because of an individual can manifest both good intentions and good emotions based on this coming together and the pressure. And that is when we say, around the full moon, I feel like I am not in balance because Mercury and retrograde is doing, you know the terms, right? Yeah, when your Mercury is in retrograde, all of these things are happening, and so with the effects of the moon and the sun, that's why you would have conflicting emotions all the time as an individual. And then there is the waxing and the waning moons, and they look like half moons. Remember earlier on when I said the moon is always full, but then you would then have the waxing, and then you would then have the waning, and so, or what you would call the crescent moons, what you will then call the crescent moons. So at any time of the month, you are going to experience the moon in different phases, this phase, that phase, that phase, and then this phase. So that is what is happening. So the energy from the moon has its own mysteries and beauties if you were to look at it. So that is why it is such a phenomenal thing about the moon. And so now, When we talk about the 29-day cycle, you can also look at it from a female perspective. That when it is your time to go on to your period, you are also out of kilter because now you have went through your own biological cycle of your own moon, and that's why they're saying we are having a 28 day, the 28-day cycle of calculating what the moon is all about, and that is essentially what they mean. And so now there are certain things that work well around the full moon. And that is when most people who are knowledgeable in the dynamics or the vibrational frequency of the moon will do certain rituals. And that is why when you are doing the study of casting spells, the study of witchcraft, the study of just healing as a whole, you will realize that the rituals that are done mostly during the full moon are much more impactful because the vibration of almost all the entire earth is high up to create a certain outcome. And people who cast spells understand that. And that is why here at Healerville, we encourage people to do their cleansings during a full moon. And there is an array of cleansings that you can find on the internet, and when you do find them, you can just choose whichever one works for you. You can even decide to say, during this month, I'm going to do this one, the next month, I'm going to do this one, just so that you can see what which one works for you. But the one that I normally like is one where you do deliberate releasing of certain things that have not been working well for you. So when I started to do the practices of the full moon, I would have a piece of paper and I would put a line. Let me just draw a line there for you. And I will then say, these are the things that I am um, releasing, and the things that I am attracting. Right. So now if certain things have been happening to me and certain things that I've absorbed negatively, I would then put them in the releasing column. And this would be the attraction column or the attracting column, things that I want to still have in the next cycle of the moon. And so, what I would then do is just to go outside, light up a white candle, and have this list of mine and have a glass of water, and I will read it out to Mother Moon because it has a feminine kind of vibe to it, isn't it? So now I would go outside during the full moon. It works well at 7 p.m., works well at 9 p.m., or whatever time that you are feeling you are safe to go out and go speak to the moon. I would go out and say, Mother Moon, in this 29-day cycle, the previous one, these are the things that I went through, and these are the things that I want to release. One typical example that I had given in one of the platforms was saying I was going through so many deaths. I went to so many funerals, and the atmosphere of death was hovering so much onto my spirit, and it was making it difficult for me to go and be in a creative mode. And as an example, you would say, I'm releasing the feelings of grief. I'm releasing whatever it is that you have summed up your feelings to say. So if you were having people betraying you, and that's that's what you've absorbed, or if you yourself were the emitter of negative energy, and you were, people like to say people are toxic, and if you were the toxic one on this aspect and aspect, or your love life was not working out well, whatever that was just causing an imbalance in your life at that moment, you would write it down and say, I'm releasing this, I'm releasing that, and speak it out because you want the frequency and the vibration to match, and you will release it, right? The presence of the candle will be there and it will be lit. Then immediately you will be talking about what it is that you are trying to attract. If you are trying to attract positivity, business luck, you are trying to attract a better flow of relations between you and your children, spouse, mother, whatever it is that you are trying to attract, then you will speak of it. And the next thing, you will take that piece of paper and burn it on the already lit candle, and it will burn. So and you are establishing, you've released and you have attracted, because most of, in fact, all of nature and spirituality, it's literally a give and take. Certain things you need to take out so that nature can bring back onto you. And so there are other people who would be having um, chakra bracelets or crystal stones, and therefore you would then put them out in the sun at midday when you know that these are the days of the full moon, or you would even take it out so that it can get to be recharged, and it takes away the energy or the bad vibes that you've been having in the previous cycle, and now you can call forth new things. And that is the teaching of the full moon. Um, there are baths that I've spoken about, the cleansings that I've spoken about. So after doing a ritual like this, you then go and you take the full moon cleansing bath. You will see that it uses a lot of grocery, um, like your bay leaves, your lemons, your honey, whichever one works for you. I've not come across one that I just said, ugh, this I do not like. This is not being effective. So try as many so that you can see which one really fits according to what is accessible for you, and the frequency. Bay leaf is much more accessible for you, than do so. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming through to the channel. So let us utilize nature so that we are working in harmony with it. And sometimes these things can happen and they cause you turbulence because you do not know how to how to how to just be in balance with certain things. If I can just help you to wrap up what is going on, is that the effects of the tides and the ocean on the moon, right, and the water in the ocean and the water on you, is the very same thing as if I am a person sitting down here and I've been relaxed the entire time. This is my frequency as an individual. And now there's a higher thing that is happening somewhere in the ocean. And even if you are not close to the ocean, but because there is the high pressure and equal pressure of the moon and the sun, that dynamic will work on you regardless of where you are in the world, right? So this is now a higher vibration. It's like somebody now taking this laptop. Let's pretend that this is a 70-inch TV, and it suddenly sits on you, it will automatically just shift you around. And so that is where we're saying people are out of kilter. I'm not well because it's during the full moon, and therefore I am impacted. And so, what will then help you to work in unison with the moon is really be intentional about what you would like to see in the next cycle, in the next 29 days, what it is that you are trying to really establish there in in the spiritual realm, using the presence of natural effects. So work together with the with nature, because you are one with it. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Intab Samwajan, and thank you for coming through to the channel. Subscribe if you find the information useful in any other way. Share, comment. Let's hear your views. The other thing, before I go, the other thing is that learn about the types of moons. So if you go into Google, you will see that each and every month there is a different name to the moon, and normally why was that moon named that, and what kind of ritual or what kind of atmosphere does that particular moon bring. So the character of the moon itself is important so that your rituals can work to your benefit. Bye bye.